In this episode, I'm going to review the Wolfpack. Okay. Wolfpack 4K 4x1 HDMI Multiview switcher. Spoiler alert, it's awesome. So I have this vision in my head of creating a studio on wheels. It's hard to explain. It's this massive Frankenstein of a thing in my head. And I'm going to get into it in a future episode where I actually build it. But this vision is what led me to need a multiviewer. So a multi-view switch or multiviewer is a switch that allows multiple HDMI or other video sources all to be displayed on one screen. If you have a TV or a monitor that does picture-in-picture, that's a form of multiviewer. Multiviewers that I'm talking about take that to the next level in that they have many view modes where you can have the screen split into many inputs and in many shapes and sizes across the screen. There are many types of multiviewers out there and in multiple price ranges, but there seems to be a gap between the cheap end multiviewers, ones under $100 range, and expensive models in the over $500 range. In many cases, the lower priced multiviewers serve the purpose well, but when I was reviewing them, they all seem to have the same issue in that they did not maintain the aspect ratio of the source in some of the view modes. They would either squish or stretch the image depending on what area of the screen they were displaying that particular source. But for my purpose, maintaining the aspect ratio in the realistic picture was a necessity. It seemed that the only way I could get that option was to go to the higher priced models, and that just didn't fit my budget. I then stumbled on a video tutorial by Rocky Wong from Being HD Electronics. I think that's how you pronounce it, here on YouTube. Link in the description down there. And their VPX 401 4K60 multiviewer looked like exactly what I was looking for. Now, this video is not sponsored in any way. This is completely my opinion. When I reached out to him and he pointed me to their partner here in the US where I obtained their branded version called the Wolfpack 4K60. The amazing part about this multiviewer is that it does, from what I can tell, virtually everything those other higher priced ones do, but at less than half the cost. And the best part about this unit is that it maintains the aspect ratio of the input it's displaying no matter what size or position on the screen it is. This means that for what I plan to use it for, monitoring video input sources, it will provide actual image display. With a stretched or squished image, especially if some inputs are displayed that way and others are not displayed that way, it can be confusing to the eyes. So I picked up this multiviewer, and now I'm going to show you guys how it works. But first, let's take a look at what's in the box. So you get the unit itself. You get a remote control. You get a power adapter and a 2-prong adapter for the United States. Get some brackets and an RS-232 connector because this does have RS-232 control. And so there is no manual. So hopefully that's available online because there's no manual that came with this. Now let me demo how the unit works. All right, so I've got this rudimentary setup with the HDMI Multiviewer here. I have 4 different HDMI inputs. So I have my A7S III as my main input camera. It's position 1. I have my A7R4 as input 3. I have my ZV-1 overhead as input 2. And I have my laptop running Imaging Edge, controlling my A7S III right now. I have that laptop as input 4. And this is the default display. It's basically 4 different inputs, all displayed the same size, same aspect ratio on the screen. I interrupt this regularly scheduled program to point out something that I should have noted during the review and tutorial that you're about to watch. One additional positive is the latency, or lack thereof, of this system. There is almost no latency, and you can observe this during the rest of the review. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. So the first button that I'm going to demonstrate is the mode button. The mode button switches between 8 different display modes for this HDMI Multiviewer. So the second mode is going to be a full screen mode of one of your inputs, currently input 1. So single input, that's kind of cool. Hello there, everybody. Single input displayed full screen. The next mode is 2 different inputs displayed side by side. Input 1 and input 2 currently. Same aspect ratio. It's not stretched, not squeezed, not anything like that. Full actual aspect ratio. Many of the other multi-viewers that I looked at, the screen would actually be stretched vertically, squished horizontally. Everybody would I'd look real tall and nice and thin. Ooh, I'd look thin. Wonder if I should get one of those. Yeah. All right, so the next mode is a standard picture-in-picture. Main screen, main input, secondary input, upper left-hand corner. Next mode is picture-in-picture, lower right-hand corner. Main screen, picture-in-picture, lower right-hand corner. Next mode is 3 different inputs, 1 stacked on top of 2, all the same size, and maintaining aspect ratio. Next mode is main input, large size, 2 secondary inputs, smaller size. Again, all the same aspect ratio. Nothing stretched, nothing squished. Next mode is dual picture-in-picture. I'm not sure if you can see it. This kind of blends in a little bit, but there's a picture-in-picture down there, and there's a picture-in-picture down there. So you've got main input, 1 input, picture-in-picture, lower left, 1 input, picture-in-picture, lower right. And now we're back to the default mode, which is all 4 inputs displayed. Now the next 2 buttons that I need to describe to you is the window button and the input button. These 2 work together to perform some unique functionality in switching the inputs on these screens. So for instance, this is mode 1, this is the default mode. If I want to change the input that's displaying in this particular window, all I would have to do is hit the input button, because right now the active window is window 1. If I want to change window 2, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. If I want to change window 2, if I want to change that input, let's say I want to rearrange these inputs, I simply hit the window button once, and now I'm on window 2, and I hit the input button to choose what input I want. And let's say I want my laptop to display there. Now I want to move down to window 3, so I go to I hit the window button. Now I'm on the active window there. And let's say I want to change that to my overhead. So now I have my overhead in this position, my laptop in that position, and now I hit the window button, and now I want to move to that position because I want to change that input to input 3. I think that's right, input 3. But now I've rearranged the layout of the screen the way that I want to see those inputs. I can do that on any of these modes. So let's say I go to another mode. Oh, here's a picture-in-picture mode. Let's say I want to change that picture-in-picture. I want that to be my laptop. I'm not sure why I would want to. I can't even see what's going on there, but you get the point here. So I hit the window button to switch to the active window off of the main window to the picture-in-picture window, and I hit the input button until I have the input that I'm looking for. Now the next button to demo is the audio button. The audio button is pretty simple. I don't even have it set up because I'm not going to be using it. But essentially the audio button selects what input of the 4 HDMI inputs, what input's audio is output on the HDMI output to the screen or wherever you're sending your HDMI output from here. Pretty self-explanatory. You just push that button until you get the audio that you're wanting from whichever input you're using. The next 2 buttons to talk about are the save and load button. Now, one of the things about changing the inputs during this mode or any of these modes is if you change an input from the default inputs that are laid out in this mode and you switch off of that mode, it's not retained. When you come back to that same mode again, and I'll cycle through these, all right, you'll notice that input is back to the default input, which was overhead. I had switched that before I moved off of it. There is a save and load function that allows you to customize any of these particular modes, customize the inputs that are in the different windows on that mode, and then save that and recall it. So for instance, if I wanted to change window 2 to my laptop, change window 3 to my overhead, change window 4 to my A7R4, pointing at the buttons here. If I move off of this mode right now and I come back to it, it'll be all reset to the original. What I can do is I can hit the save button and then I can hit any one of these buttons. And I just hit the mode button, which I'm calling save position 1. I can now recall that by hitting the load button and the corresponding button, and it'll recall that layout. And essentially the save button works on mode button, win button, input button, and audio button. It equates to save position 1, save position 2, save position 3, and save position 4. So you have 4 different save positions available that you can save a custom layout and custom inputs. Let's move to the remote. So the remote does the same thing that these buttons do. In the center here, let's make sure I've got it in screen here. In the center here, you have your mode button. This center button is your mode button. So if I push this, I'm going to switch between the different modes, just like the mode button does there. Now your window button, this button right here, it looks like the 4 different windows. This window button allows you to select the active window and pick whatever input you want that window to be. You have input 1, input 2, input 3, and input 4. You can actually select the inputs. The remote is actually a little bit more convenient than the box when it comes to changing inputs because you can actually push the window and you can actually pick and go directly to the input. You don't have to cycle through the inputs to do that. So let's move to a different mode so I can show that. So right now, the active window is this window. That's the default active window. Anytime you move into a mode is window 1. So if I push this window button, now the window should be selected for window 2, and I can pick input 4. I can go directly to input 4. I don't have to hit input, input, input. I can actually hit whatever input that I want. So the remote is actually a little bit more streamlined in that way. The other thing that the remote does is allows you to change the audio. Your audio button that is here on the box is the audio button that is here on the remote. As well, the remote allows you to change the output resolution of this HDMI box. If you hit this 4K button, it cycles between, I believe, 720, 1080p, 2160, and 2160 60 hertz, I think is the 4 different outputs that you can do. Push this button, you can cycle through it. So if you don't have a 4K monitor, if you have a 1080p monitor that you're displaying this out to, you can use the 4K button to essentially show the right resolution to that monitor. The remote also features a save and load just like the box does. So if I hit the load and input 1, which is corresponds to the mode button here. So mode button, input 1 is save position 1. Win button and input 2 is save position 2, and so on. So you can actually recall save positions from here, and you can also save them. So once you configure the screens with the inputs that you want, you can actually hit the save button and pick 1, 2, 3, or 4 to choose which save position to save it in directly from the remote. So essentially, you can do everything that you can do on the unit, you can do from the remote, which is nice because if you have this set up farther away from yourself and you need to be able to make the switches, you can make them from the remote. Now, there are 4 things about this particular unit that are kind of complaints. Most of them are convenience. In fact, all of them really are convenience complaints. So the first one is no user manual. No user manual came in the box. Online, where I got it from, they don't actually have a user manual. It looks like it says there's a user manual, but it's actually an RS-232 command manual. But then they have the words user manual tagged to the end of it. At least at the time that I'm making this video, that's how it is. It's not to say that they aren't fixing it. I actually brought it up and hopefully they'll fix it. But there's no user manual that's downloadable from the website right now either. I was lucky enough to get the user manual directly from the manufacturer when I had originally contacted them. Subsequently, it's very important to have the user manual. There's some key things in there. Other than what I've shown you, hopefully this is a pretty good user manual. But it's really unacceptable to not have any type of paperwork in the box whatsoever. It's just kind of like you open this up, this is a brand new thing, and there's not even a quick start guide or anything like that. Number 2 is there is no power switch on this box. The only way to turn this box off is to remove power. One that's kind of inconvenient, if you have this mounted somewhere that's kind of farther away and you don't have a switch in the front where you can just flip it, and you have to reach in the back and you have to pull the power out, and then you have to try to find some place to store that cord or hang it or dangle it someplace so it's easy to grab it and plug it back in next time that you want to power this thing on. There's that, and then there's also the fact that it's electronic equipment, and so anytime you're just yanking the power on something, you're always worrying if it's going to reduce the longevity of that electrical component. A lot of electrical components, when you flip the switch, there is a graceful or a soft power down that happens within the circuitry. I don't feel like that's happening within this box. Number 3 is the fact that when you push the window button, you are not given any indication what window you're on. You have to remember it in your head. You have to keep track. If you push the window button and you're not quite sure you pushed it hard enough, or you accidentally pushed it and now you're actually on a position on a window you don't know you're on, the only way to know what window you're actually actively on is to hit the input button and see the input change. If you're on the wrong window, you have to cycle through the inputs until you get back to the right input you wanted on that window, and then hit the window button to get to the right window that you were at. What I would like to see in the future, what I'd like to see in the box right now, unfortunately, but it's not there. What I'd like to see in the future is that when you hit the window button, a nice little red box or yellow box or orange box appears over the active window for like 5 seconds, letting you know, oh, this is the window you're on. Hit the window button. This is the window you're on. Hit the window button. This is the window you're on. I wonder if everybody's enjoying my sound effects. But anyway, I think that would be a cool addition, and I think it would help to understand which active window you're actually on. The 4th issue is the resolution button. The 4K button, when you press it, does not let you know what resolution you're on. It would be nice when you hit the 4K button and you cycle between 720, 1080p, 2160, that it showed some text output on the screen above telling you, you're on 720, you're on 1080p, you're on 2160, even for like 5 seconds to let you know. The only way to find that out is to actually inspect on the monitor what the input resolution is. And many monitors don't do that, or it's hidden behind multiple cascading menus to get to it. Other than that, it's a fantastic unit. And again, those are convenience complaints, but I'd love to see them built in or baked into a future model, because then that would make this thing absolutely fantastic. So that was a pretty quick review and tutorial on this multiviewer, as I'm anxious to start working on building my studio on wheels And I have a couple other projects I'm working on too. But I plan to do a more long-term review of this unit after I spend some time actually using it. This is a great piece of equipment if you need to see multiple HDMI inputs from multiple sources, all laid out on one single screen. This has its negatives, but they are not huge impediments that take away from the functionality of the device. And for the price, just $225 at the time of this video, it's definitely a great value. Additionally, I've reached out to the manufacturer with my feedback, and they've indicated they have improvements coming in a future model. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.